Let her go home. Yeah, let her go home.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Sunday Toki TV, our gathering each and every week in faith, prayer, and education for our dear Sk'aliCh'ehl-tenaut. Thank you. I see people typing in. They already know the drill. Type in where you're watching from, and because we love to see that. So, hey, Andrea from Houston, Texas. And we got people from Belgium today, Friday Harbor. I know we have London and Germany. Thank you, everyone, for watching, whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, or nighttime where you are. We really appreciate you being here with us today. Hey, Robert from Southern California. Guys, we have a really special show today. We have a very special guest, Charles Vinick, who we will be talking to very shortly. But as you know, before we get started, we want to open ourselves up in prayer. So, Susan, if you would play some flute for us before we have our practitioner join us with the prayer today.
And thank you to the Lummi and to Lolita elders who have given me permission to play my cedar flute. I never know what's going to come out of it. It's always a prayer that just comes through me. So here's for Toki.
Thank you very much, Susan. I'm going to have practitioner Marilyn O'Leary join us for an invocation just to get us even more centered. That was perfect. Thank you, Susan. Let's hear from Marilyn.
Please join with me as we call upon divine nature to remind us of our oneness with each other, of our oneness with the universe, with all of the creatures of the universe. And we're here because we understand our oneness with our beautiful, wonderful Toki. So as we join, looking for her best, I affirm that each person that participates in this endeavor is blessed and is divinely guided. And I affirm for Toki perfect health and well-being, and that her caregivers are guided to the right decision. And I affirm for all of those who care about her, who are involved with her care, I affirm that they have peace in their hearts, peace of mind, and they are comforted knowing that the best for her is what is going to take place and what is taking place at this time. And so I'm thankful for everyone here. I'm thankful for our beautiful knowing that we are one with nature. We are one with the divinity of all. And we know that as we care for all of God's things in the universe, including each other, we are guided in doing the right thing. And so I thank every person here, and I release this prayer knowing that it comes fulfilled to all of us. And so it is.
All right. Thank you to Marilyn for that beautiful opening prayer. I see a lot of comments, so keep them coming where you're watching from. We do appreciate that. A lot of questions coming in already as well. So I do want to go ahead and say this ahead of time is we are definitely going to be, Charles is going to be answering a lot of questions today. And we are going to address all the questions that were in the most recent letter campaign. Thank you, Joe, for that. So if you're going to ask those questions, just hold on a little bit. I suggest let's hear from Charles. After we hear from Charles, then you can start coming in with the questions just to make sure that we're not asking something he's already addressed. So if you don't mind to do that, and if you could also get all your questions into one comment, that would help Deb, who is going to be fielding all the comments coming in. So if you could keep that in mind as well when you're doing your comments, we'd appreciate that. Before we go to Charles, Howard, do you mind to give us an update on what's going on with the oil spill? And maybe people aren't aware of what happened. Do you mind to talk about that?
Sure. I'll try to give an update to the best of our knowledge. We're keeping abreast of developments the best we can. Two things happened around midday yesterday, two amazing events. One was that all three pods were reported coming in from the Pacific for the first time in weeks or months in some cases. And there was rejoicing and eager anticipation that they were coming in, as they usually do, to the west side of San Juan Island. And people were heading for the shorelines to be able to see them hours early sometimes. But about the same time, in early afternoon, mid-afternoon, around 4 or 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, we got reports of the sinking of a fishing boat, a 50-foot purse seiner, right off the west side of San Juan Island, right off basically where the Center for Whale Research is located near Snug Harbor and close to shore, and that it was leaking diesel. And diesel could be very toxic and very harmful if those whales had swum through it, if they had gotten exposed to it, if they had inhaled those fumes. And they don't, orcas and whales in general don't really have a sense of smell. They don't have the olfactory lobes that allows them to be able to smell that in the air when they inhale. So they would not necessarily be aware of it at all. And it could be very harmful. Not as bad as a crude oil spill if that had happened. That's a worst case nightmare scenario. So I do want to distinguish the diesel fuel does evaporate off over time, but it is still coming up. And so it is very scary. The good news, however, is that this morning, J, K, and L pods were reported headed back out to sea, and overnight they were not reported or heard over their two hydrophones in the area where they would have been if they'd gone anywhere near that diesel spill, and they apparently did not overnight. So they just pivoted and U-turned right back out to the ocean. Usually that's lamented when they come in and then depart right away. But this time, everyone was very thankful that they left. Whether they knew what was happening or not, I can never know. But they did leave. So that's good news. Southern residents were not harmed by this. But of course, there are the big transient orcas. There are seals and sea lions and porpoises.
It was a minke
and a
whale
minke
south.
whale that was seen breaching a few miles away from that spill. So it's an ongoing catastrophe. There are all the agencies, Coast Guard, ecology, fish and wildlife, and the oil spill response team is out there. The area is boomed off, but with the strong currents, that boom gets kind of swept away and isn't very effective. So it's still a very scary situation, but the southern residents at least are safe for now. So that's our bottom line.
And our sighting network staff is continuing to work with Fish and Wildlife to give reports every 2 hours on what whales might be around. But we are so thankful they last.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I think we should go ahead and get on in. And for people who are worried about the hour, we might go over a little hour today. We might go a little over an hour today. So bear with us if we do that. But Charles has graciously agreed to answer your guys' questions, and I know we have a lot. But before we get into the questions, Charles, and we definitely want to talk about the questions in the letter campaign. But do you want to give an overview for people who may not know? As you guys know, Charles is the executive director of the Whale Sanctuary Project, and he's also on the board and one of the founding members of Friends of Lolita. But Charles, do you mind to just kind of give a brief introduction of your background? I know you've worked with the Cousteaus. You have an extensive history in policy and law, and so if you don't mind to just share a little bit about that, and then maybe coming up to now what you do with the Whale Sanctuary Project, and then Friends of Lolita, which is what everyone wants to know about.
Well, thank you, Annette, and thank all of you, particularly for Howard and Alejandro, Annette, for inviting me, Deb, to join you today. I'm pleased to be here. This certainly doesn't have to be a one-time event. I know this is important for all of you. It's important for all of us, and I'm pleased to join you and look forward to doing this again as you all invite me back. Sure, I can give a little bit of background. I think part of it is you live long enough, you've gotten the opportunity to do stuff. So you can tell from my white hair and white beard, I've lived long enough to have the privilege of doing a bunch of stuff over a long period of time. And certainly the experience of having spent some 30 plus years with the Cousteau family, managing their work around the world, the work of the Cousteau Society, and later the work of Ocean Future Society, Jean-Michel Cousteau's organization, has given me a chance to work with, first of all, some very special people around the world who are completely committed to the environment, who opened our eyes in many respects to the ocean world. And so that was a tremendous privilege to know someone like Jacques Cousteau, to work hand in hand with him, with his son, Jean-Michel, who is my closest friend, who lives here in Santa Barbara, California, where I do. We moved here in the early 90s, actually the late 80s, because we were closing our Los Angeles office, and Jean-Michel wanted to find a place which was as close environmentally and climate-wise to where he grew up in the south of France. And that's how we came, my wife and I, Susan, came here to Santa Barbara. And so what I always say is it's not the easiest place to work in, but it's the most wonderful place I know to come back to or to leave from when you do the kind of traveling the work that so many of you and I've had the privilege of doing. So a long way of saying that I was privileged to manage the work of the Cousteaus, help produce many of the TV shows, some 90 hours of television with the Turner Broadcasting Company, other broadcasts long before that as well, before I was involved. And then I've had the opportunity to be the CEO of a number of environmental organizations, as well as CEO and chairman of some for-profit organizations in renewable energy and produced really treating water with non-chemical different technologies. So I've been in the business of working to protect and preserve the environment in many ways, both as an advocate and as a practitioner through much of my career. And when Dr. Lori Marino founded the Whale Sanctuary Project, and I was asked to be on the board, then asked to also be the executive director. So I've been in that role since really 2017, as we've looked to create the first sanctuary for captive whales in North America. So we are involved in that. It's a 24/7 kind of operation, and you just add more activities to that 24/7 as they come up. And that's certainly what we'll talk about today. But we are in the process of creating that first sanctuary in North America in Port Hilford Bay in Nova Scotia. And that has been a real privilege to be part of and to help move forward in every way. And should there be questions about that, I'm happy to answer them as well. As most of you know, in March, the Dolphin Company took over Miami Seaquarium. They purchased it from Palace Entertainment, and they are now the owners and operators of the Miami Seaquarium. It still operates under the name Miami Seaquarium, but it is the direction of that comes from the Dolphin Company. And we learned, and many of you learned, that that was going to occur back in October. And even before, we heard rumblings about that. And so Howard, I know, started writing to Mr. Albor, Eduardo Albor, who is the CEO of the Dolphin Company. And I started writing to him as well, as I'm sure many of you did. And I began to get responses that he would certainly begin to talk to me once their purchase was completed. And so that was, very positive, but it took longer than any of us expected. So that didn't actually occur until March, when they actually took over, March of this year. And then Pritam Singh, Mr. Singh, offered to become a part of this whole effort and offered to provide resources to also look at how we could take every possible step to improve Toki's health and to look at all the possibilities of bringing her home to the Salish Sea. And so I did have the opportunity to meet Mr. Singh, was asked to help co-found Friends of Lolita, as we're calling it. And I think some of us chatted just yesterday how, it might have been easier if we called it Friends of Toki, and you could find it when you put it in the search engine, because you put Lolita in the search engine and you all know what you find, but it's a long way to find anything about Toki. So, but in any case, Friends of Lolita is there. The website is up. You can find all of our updates there. And what I will say is this has been, a day-to-day operation to understand how to build that website, how to communicate more clearly. And we know that we have much more to do in this regard. And this is one step in that process, to be here today and to look at ways for that website to be more engaging, more active, to have more than just monthly health updates. So all of that is in the works. But let me take a step back from all of that and say that none of us, in terms of Friends of Lolita, Pritam Singh, myself, others on the board, would not be doing this work but for all of you. Howard, who's been at this for decades and has been keeping all of this alive in ways that we would never have had an opportunity to meet Mr. Albor, to be engaged with him in the way we are today, that I think is pretty special. And we'll talk about that. But it's all of you who are, Toki's Army. There are various names for all of your groups, but all of you have made this possible. And I'm grateful to you for, allowing me to be part of it. And I'm privileged to be part of this work. And all of us, I think, have the exact same objective, and that's to bring her home, to have her have the opportunity to swim again in the Salish Sea. So yeah, it takes a long time. I recognize the impatience that many of you have. I share that impatience, but I think we're making more progress today than we've ever had the opportunity to make before, because we have a channel of communication that's honest that's open and that allows us to challenge one another in terms of those who have custody of Toki, Sk'aliCh'ehl-tenaut, Lolita, whichever of her names one refers to. But we now have communication with them in a way we've not had before. Is it enough? Are we doing enough? Certainly not. But do we have the opportunity to bring this forward in a way we haven't had before? I think we do. And I think many of you do as well, even though you wish it were faster and can't understand some of what we're doing. So that's kind of my kind of introduction to all of this conversation. As Annette said, I'm pleased to answer any question I can. I don't have answers to all of your questions. As you heard from my brief introduction to my background, I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not even a marine biologist. And yet I've had the privilege of doing lots of things in the ocean for 45, 50 years. What I do is try to bring people together. Oftentimes people who cannot work together in other ways, I try to be a bridge. I try to manage people, activities, whatever has to be done to get something done in the ocean, whether it's with the ship Calypso or Alcyon, as it was with Cousteau, whether it's our work in Nova Scotia to create a whale sanctuary. Putting a mile of net into the ocean is not a small task. Bringing the logistics together, finding the experts to do that, helping manage the personnel, as well as some of the environmental and the animal side of things, that's kind of what I do. And so where I say I don't have an answer, it's because I probably don't have the expertise to respond to your question. I will certainly share what I know about it openly and honestly and help you understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, and where you have criticism, I'll take it to heart and try to do better. So that's who you get today. And certainly happy to jump into some of the questions. And Annette, I can respond to, I've only gotten, I think, 103 letters. So
That's it.
I haven't read all of them. Luckily, some of them are similar to others. So we've tried to, with help of folks on our team, try to sort out some that are different in case I have those questions as well. But I'm happy to jump into some of those questions, Annette, or simply respond if you want to ask them of me.
Sure. Well, let's look at the letter, the questions in the letters. Number one was not just medically, but how is she doing? I mean, have you seen her? Like how's she doing?
Yes, I have actually seen her. And we ought to talk a little bit about how one gets to see her and why I have and you haven't, because I think that's certainly on your minds as well. So how is she doing? When I've been in the park, in Miami Sea Aquarium and in her amphitheater area, and I have had a number of trips where I've been there and been able to spend time with her trainers, with the veterinarians who are on site full time. She looks very good. I mean, this is a remarkable whale. I mean, you talk about this in your introduction, you see the pictures. When you see it in person, and many of you have been in the park over the years, she looks healthy. She is responsive. She does jumps. She does fast swims. She'll come over to you and be responsive. You're looking for that connection between me and her or you and her. And that happens. That is not mythological. It's right there. Howie has been there in the park over the years, and others have been more recently. And you get that connection and you see her being a healthy animal. Her skin looks good. Her eyes look clear most of the time. She doesn't have bruises on her body. So how is she doing? She looks like a robust, strong whale. And, I've said a number of times, she's one tough whale or we wouldn't be having this conversation. She has survived in the smallest tank. She's survived over all of these years when so many other orcas have not. And so you have to say, wow, this is an animal who has learned how to survive in these conditions, and in some ways to thrive in these conditions, much as we may not give, with all of our backgrounds, our commitments to not having whales and dolphins in captivity. We have to say, here's an animal who has learned how to do that under some pretty tough circumstances. So when I've had the chance to be with her, in every one of those circumstances, she's appeared and looked healthy and strong. She has been responsive to her trainers. Now, is that what you want to see? Response to trainers is some ways, for some of you, a dichotomy. But that is how she gets her enrichment. What has been her life over all these years? It has been performing. So a crowd and the excitement of a crowd is somewhat what she responds to. The music of her show, much as we would say she shouldn't be doing shows, is enriching for her. It gives her feedback, and she responds to feedback. So she looks and appears healthy. Now, we do need to talk and be understanding about her medical condition. So what is it that Friends of Lolita wanted the opportunity to do? It was exactly what so many of you had asked for many months before the dolphin company owned Miami Seaquarium and took over the lease and were licensed to have the facility by the USDA. Going back decades, you've been asking for independent, transparent health evaluations. And that's what we were able to do. 2 weeks ago, you heard from Dr. Stephanie Norman, who is part of the team that has come in, along with Dr. Jim McBain. And so we now do have not only her on-site veterinarians, and there are 2 on-site today, the consulting veterinarians who are working with the Dolphin Company and the Miami Seaquarium, and Dr. Norman and Dr. McBain. And so we've had an opportunity now to have independent health assessment, not only of her today, but looking back at her records over all these years to understand the history of her health. And that has been an up and down history over many years. She's been medicated for a very long time. What you've seen in our medical reports is that she does have a chronic illness, a chronic infection. And she's being treated for that chronic infection with antibiotics, with other medications, and the like. What we don't know today, and the vets don't know today, is what's the cause of that infection? What is causing that to sustain itself, to continue over time? So it's been stabilized with antibiotics. Now, the primary way that antibiotic has been given over time is an intravenous injection into her tail flukes. That's where intravenous injections are normally given in an orca, as well as other cetaceans. And so that's not what you necessarily want to do over long periods of time. Those blood vessels are not large. There are not an unlimited number. So you prefer, if she has to be on an antibiotic, for it to be an oral antibiotic. So among the things that were tried right from the outset, starting in May, when our vets first had the opportunity to visit the park and to work with her veterinarians and to go in and review everything and make their recommendations, the recommendations were around an oral antibiotic. And that was certainly what was done. Now, what we have seen, bringing that to the present, to these last couple of weeks, since the report that you've seen on Friends of Lolita and that's been out in the press, is that she was some not positive responses, as positive as she'd had before, to the oral antibiotic. So she is now back on the IV antibiotic. So what's her day like? So her day is filled with exercise routines, simulated shows is what those are on certain parts of the day. She goes through very similar types of exercises upon giving a cue from her trainers and from her animal care staff. She'll do fast swims. She'll do some jumps. She'll come back for food. She'll respond to a touch. She'll go in other ways, sometimes with the lag, the white-sided dolphin that's there, Lee. She'll do things adjacent to him, with him, most times separately. When you first walk into the area, there's one stairway, which is a staff stairway that you can come up into to her enclosure and to the pool area. She will almost always come over there primarily to greet her trainers. She doesn't know me, so she's not coming over to greet me very often, but she's coming over to greet the people she knows, the people she trusts, the people who are giving her her primary care. It's also where she's often receives some ice or some jello, some gelatin. These are things that give her hydration in addition to her food. She'll get some food over there. She also gets food on the slide out area, which you're familiar with when you've seen the top-down views of her tank. So she's over in that area with a trainer, with staff, receiving her food. So her day includes an IV injection, if that's what she's getting, a daily exhale sample. So we get respiration samples that are analyzed. She gets exercise and training. She gets enrichment. So what's enrichment about? It can be a hose in the water with a spray that she'll play with. She has some favorite toys that she'll use. A toy can be an old wetsuit that she swims around with and leaves. These are things that she chooses to use for enrichment. And we'll talk again about how to, as the day goes on here, about how we should add more kinds of enrichment to her environment, what types they should be, and why, and who selects those. She is observed all day. She has people with her virtually throughout the day. Sometimes she's alone, more often not. And so there are people there just observing. When I've had the opportunity to be there, I can sit in the amphitheater stands for unlimited amounts of time and watch her. Sometimes she'll go over, I think some of you know that one corner area where she spends some time, but more often she's moving around. The pool area that you see can be divided into two. In other words, where you have that slide out area where you see the trainers providing the exercise and doing shows when they used to do shows, has two glass doors, plexiglass doors that can be closed hydraulically and separate the two areas. If they want to separate Li'i and Toki, they can do that. Or if there's a reason to separate for other reasons, they're able to do that. So those two doors are hydraulically moved. And those are new doors. They were put in by the Dolphin Company. The old wardens were not as serviceable. These are new that have been put in. So that's her day. She also gets some full salmon fish along with her other fish. The salmon provide more nutrition than some others, and they provide more liquid. And keeping her hydrated is very important. She gets, 125 to 145 pounds of fish a day, depending on how she's doing, what her exercise routines are, and how she responds to her diet. So everything now, I can't speak to before the Dolphin Company was there, but now it's all, what is she responding to and how is she responding? How does she drive what one observes of the day and drives her exercise routines? So I think in many cases, those of us who have been in this work, if you will, of wanting whales to not be in performing parks for so many years, would say performances shouldn't be part of her day. But today, that is part of her routine that she is responsive to, and she needs that kind of exercise. And so I think one of the dilemmas that some of the vets have spoken about is, okay, today she's not getting that kind of response from a large audience. And so we celebrate the fact that she's no longer performing. And at the same time, we have to recognize that in that environment, she still needs stimulation. And so we have to balance that with trying to do things that give her that stimulation. And I think that is a challenge. I think her animal care staff, her trainers, and her veterinarians are looking constantly for ways to give her more enrichment. And that's part of what we're working on.
Charles,
So-
I want to ask real quick
Yeah,
because and I'm sorry, I hope I don't throw you off on, but
no,
there's
go
a
for
lot of comments coming in about the environment. And as you know, there's a lot of questions coming in, like, how do we know the environment's not what caused her infection or what's keeping her from getting well? That's one of the questions. And then also, you know, why can't she get this kind of care in a C-pen? I don't know if you can answer those two things, but what's preventing, like, I know there's federal permits and all that, which we'll talk about because I want people to understand that process as well. But let's say that they would. Could that be something we tell the federal agencies, like, she needs to go there so she can get well? Can you talk a little bit about the environment? People are mad about how the pool looks. You've seen the drone footage. It doesn't look clean. What can you tell us about that?
Sure. So first of all, again, let's step back. This is a very old park. If you've had a chance to go through it as a visitor, it is surprising in many ways about how old it is and the condition the previous owners kept it in or allowed it to deteriorate in. So the new owners clearly have taken on a major challenge to bring this park forward, or they wouldn't have bought it. I mean, they bought it as a business. So, you know, I'm not part of their business decision making. I've never even discussed that. But certainly, this park needs to be improved in every way. That's also true about her facility. It is old. It doesn't have the systems that you would put in place today to keep the water as cold as it should be, to keep it as clean as it should be, all of those things. Now, so what are the three areas we are working on together? It's her health, it's her physical environment, and it's the enrichment she receives from her human caregivers. So those are the three pillars of work that the Dolphin Company and Friends of Lolita have agreed to work on together. The first one was all about health. It was, we've got to understand her health, and we've got to do everything we can to improve it immediately. Now, simultaneously, they were looking, the Dolphin Company, and now with us, at improving the physical condition. Because particularly in the summer months, Biscayne Bay gets warm and water comes in from Biscayne Bay to give it the salinity, to give it the natural water that she wants. And that water is warmer than we'd like. So how is it cooled? There are chillers, machinery that chill the water and filter it in various ways. So some of those were not working as well as they need to. So the Dolphin Company has made a commitment to fixing them. Pritam Singh has made a commitment to helping them in every way, financially and otherwise. I've been able to review the engineering proposals with the Dolphin Company, and we're looking to make those changes. Now, some of the changes are construction changes. So if you think back to the USDA report from last June and the subsequent reports, among the things they were concerned about was construction in her environment that could be happening at times that would not be conducive to her well-being. They had seen patterns of that over time. So now what we're looking to do is make immediate changes that will not be disruptive to her in any way, so we can quickly make changes to her water quality and her environment. There are now divers that are doing cleaning in a way they weren't doing before, that the Dolphin Company has brought in. They're doing things on site right now that we're able to observe, to confirm, and also to be critical of if we think more should be done. They're open to all of that kind of conversation. So that's currently happening. The first things we want to do, because what we learned this last week, some of the engineering, supply chain issues like are happening everywhere else, could be 6 weeks before some of the new equipment for chillers is available. But the engineers have made proposals to move some things, to do some things on an interim basis. And the veterinarians have reviewed that to be sure they agree that those kinds of things happening, the technical work that's necessary can be done in ways that will not have a negative impact on TokiTV. So that's happening. Now, the environment certainly has been a challenge. The veterinarians looking at it don't believe that's the cause of her infection. This really is an internal infection that she has. Believe it's respiratory. But how do you find an infection? And Dr. Norman spoke about this 2 weeks ago, how difficult it is to identify the root cause of an infection in an orca, in part because of their size, in part because of the facilities that are available. In certain marine parks, in most, there are not only a slide out like she has, but there's a medical lift or a way to reduce the water depth so that she is still buoyant, but able to be secure and somewhat under, if you will, control of the veterinarians and the trainers so they can do certain diagnostics. In the Miami Seaquarium, there is no medical lift. There is no way to reduce water depth in one part of the area to keep her under control like that. So all of her medical work has to be done on the slide out where she comes out. So what does that mean? It means she's moving a little bit when you're doing that diagnostic work. So one of the key tools that they've used over years has been an ultrasound. But if she's moving, as you would recognize from ultrasounds you've had, the image on the ultrasound is not precise, it's not as clear, and you can't get a longitudinal ultrasound over her whole body. So we don't have the same diagnostic tools to use with her that one would like. One very simple tool. What happens every time one of us goes to the doctor? We say we got something going on. They first ask for a urinalysis. Getting a urinalysis from Toki is very difficult. She actually doesn't hold still for that, as you can imagine, running around with a beaker trying to do that in place and not get it contaminated with water and the like is a problem. So every diagnostic tool that can be used, that's why there are consulting vets who have been brought in. That's certainly what Dr. Norman, as you know from the discussion you had with her, as an epidemiologist, this is an area of her expertise, as well as all the experience that Jim McBain has over many years. So we're looking at all of those. But coming back to Annette's question of whether is it the water environment and we just move her to a bay pen somewhere and she will be in an environment that's better, and therefore would that cure her infection? Again, I'm not a veterinarian. That's not what the veterinarians believe to be the case. And we now have a number of vets with different sets of expertise discussing and comparing notes. But it's also not the case that the Dolphin Company alone, Friends of Lolita in tandem with them, or any of us have the ability to make that decision to move her. That will not be their decision alone. That will be a decision of multiple federal and state agencies to have such a facility available, to approve a transport, and to approve her being in another facility, because a bay pen is still a facility. A netted enclosure in the Puget Sound, in the Salish Sea, is still an enclosure. It too would have to have a license from the USDA to operate. Certainly, National Marine Fisheries Service, the Department of Commerce is involved in any of this. The Army Corps of Engineers is involved. All of those agencies. For any of you, I've had the, I don't know exactly what, I've had the experience. I was going to call it a privilege. I don't think that's the right word. I've had the experience of going and being before these agencies in many different needs for permits and the like. You want to go to these agencies when you have all of your, wrong analogy for this group, all your ducks in a row. You want to go being strongest because they are risk averse. They will not take a decision that they think they can be accused of not following all of their protocols of, and in this case, what's the risk? And I'm not saying I share this opinion or you do, but their concern will be, you're asking us to approve transporting an animal who you know is ill, even if you don't know why, to an area where there is a major endangered species and where the environment is known as well to be highly toxic and concerning for cetaceans. So those are issues that will come up, not necessarily that we would agree, but that'll be the starting point with agencies. And so we have to recognize that. And when we're talking to them, be prepared for those kind of pressures back. Doesn't mean we don't go and doesn't mean we don't try, but that's the reality of that history of working with them. So Annette, I don't want to drag on unnecessarily. We'll come back to any number of parts of the questions.
Howard,
but, individually.
No, I appreciate that. Howard, did you want to say something about that?
I think you're still muted, Howard.
I know. There we go. Control D. That did it. Okay. I would like to know if there is a way, at least publicly, if not directly to these agencies, to rebut some of those assumptions or to at least question them, like that the water is toxic in the Salish Sea.
Well,
what is that about?
Remember, those were my words, not theirs. And I wouldn't say.
Well, I know, but they are common words, and it's a sort of a simple generalization that has this image of poison, of a terrible.
That's not the intent.
Well, it does have that impression, that connotation.
We do know there are pressures on the southern residents from that environment, and so all I'm saying. Well,
no, we don't. Let me answer that, because it's not the environment, it is the accessibility of prey. It is the abundance of Chinook salmon that is the issue, and that would not be an issue for Toki. So it is not the environment that is harming the southern residents. It's merely the lack of food.
Well, I think, and I recognize that position, and I think others also bring to that discussion other pressures on them in addition. May not be as severe and the like, but the issues of noise and boats and different issues. So I don't know that we need to debate those today, because I think what's important though is that the agencies will be concerned about bringing her back to the Salish Sea, given the endangered population of the southern residents. And we will be strongest if we go to them when she is healthier than she is now.
Right, but I think it's also important for us to advocate for a clearer perception of what they see as a problem. I don't, if that is sort of the general consensus, I really think that should be addressed. And, we can do it, but it helps if you do it. And if Friends of Lolita will do that.
Sure.
We'll actually, talk about some of these assumptions.
Well, no, I think that's true. I don't disagree with that at all. And certainly, this is not us and you. It's all of us.
Well, yeah.
So Friends of Lolita isn't, a closed shop in any way. We're looking to bring everyone into that discussion. So should the opportunity, and not the opportunity, should we move forward and get these kinds of discussions going on with agencies, there's no reason you and others with expertise and knowledge and experience wouldn't be part of those discussions with us and with them. Because no stone should be left unturned in this process.
Okay.
So, I'm sharing impressions about those agencies or about what we have to do.
Great.
But those are only impressions. We
Right.
we need to do everything.
Well, I would like to put those impressions on the table and make those
And I
object
welcome
of
them.
discussion.
I welcome, and I think they should be. And I don't think the agencies are monolithic. They're individuals just like the rest of us. So we need to be working with the ones that are listening as opposed to the ones who are not. And there are both. But the process of getting a bay pen or a netted enclosure as a temporary or permanent home for her in the Salish Sea requires state approval. Department of Natural Resources has to do that. Certainly, I think, as many of you know, going back a number of years with the Whale Sanctuary Project, working hand in hand with the Sacred Sea Conservancy of the Lummi, we started looking at how we could identify sites for such a location for a bay pen and a netted enclosure, talked with all of the agencies that are at the state level and some at the federal level who would do it. And one needs to think about, okay, who should be the applicant for such a location? So should that be the Dolphin Company? Should it be Friends of Lolita? Should it be the Whale Sanctuary Project? Should it be Orca Network? And I think what a number of us came to, and certainly they did so much to try to bring this forward, is that if it was the First Nation, a First Nation Lummi or Sacred Sea Conservancy, but a Lummi endeavor, we then move it from a proponent like me, some guy who thinks this is a good idea, to being nation to nation discussion. No longer some applicant going in requesting. There's a whole different opportunity if it's a nation to nation discussion that may take some of the barriers. It can take years to get a permit. I can't tell you what I'm going through in Nova Scotia on a day-to-day basis, and their parliament has said it's a great idea to have a whale sanctuary in Nova Scotia, and that doesn't necessarily move the regulators. But so if this can be a different approach that can cut through some of the standard red tape that'll still hit even a project that everyone loves as they do this one, then it's important. So I continue, and I think so many of us continue to believe the work of the Lummi has been tremendously valuable in this area, and they're still doing it. I'm in touch with Renell and Ellie all the time. Howard is, many of you are, and Sacred Sea Conservancy is certainly looking to continue the work they've done. We've created the Whale Sanctuary Project, a protocol building upon the work that Howard personally did along with all of his associates to build a protocol for health assessment, which is what we're doing now, for ongoing training for transport, if that's what's to come, how we would do transport from truck to barge to plane, every step of the way to a site, and how you would build it and install a facility for her. All of that has already been done and planned, and much of it is outlined on the Sacred Sea Conservancy website, as well as I think on lots of it are on the Whale Sanctuary site, and a lot of it is certainly what Howard has always had on the Orca Network site. So that work is underway, but one can't apply for a permit for a bay pen or a netted enclosure without there being an entity that has both custody of the animal and the ability to go forward to get the permitting.
Right.
So we're not quite there yet. That doesn't mean it isn't being discussed on a daily basis, but I just want to give you a sense of there's a lot to it. A bunch of us have had experience doing it, and there are a whole lot of others who have experience as well that need to be part of that effort. and we're all going to come together, because that's still the goal, no matter what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And we can do more, and we're looking to do it. So Annette, I'm taking much longer to answer each question.
No, that's
but you know, there you go.
this is a good discussion. And one of the there's a lot of questions. So before we even get to federal permitting and all that kind of stuff, our assumption is the Dolphin Company, they own her, right? Well, and we can talk about federal agencies because people also want to know, well, what's the USDA doing? Who's watching you guys and the Dolphin Company?
And that's a great question.
You know, and I know that's a little unclear, and there was, you know, a letter written by members of Congress trying to get an answer from USDA, like, well, who are you guys not watching her anymore? So there's that question's coming up. But also, if the Dolphin Company are the owners, have they indicated, and this question is probably about 10 or 12 already on here, have they indicated that they're willing to go through with that plan once she is healthy? Has there been any indication that they want that as well?
I'm not totally comfortable speaking for the Dolphin Company. I can speak certainly for Friends of Lolita, for the Whale Sanctuary Project, and for myself. But what in my conversations with Eduardo Albor and other members of his leadership team, but particularly with him personally, I think he has said that he will support moving her if she is healthy enough to be moved and the vets think that that's the right thing to do. And I take him at his word. I mean, I think he has been consistent in that, in going back to the very first emails I had from him, even before they took over ownership of the park. I think, and he's been sincere in that regard. And it's not the case that, you know, they have other orca in other parks. You know, obviously they have dolphins. So I take him at his word that he is sincere in wanting to do everything, no matter what it takes, for her health and for her welfare, in addition to her physical health, for her mental welfare, for her psychological well-being, and for having her be in the place that will be the healthiest for her, including bringing her home. And there's no question that is the position of all of us who are working with her from Friends of Lolita. We share that opinion. You know, this is just let me take one moment, if I may, to talk about that relationship.
Of course.
Because, you know, this is pretty unusual. You got a bunch, you know, I know what, Annette, before we came on live, I think Annette was talking about, there'd been a lot of discussion that we're all a bunch of tree huggers. So I don't know what phrase one would use for who we all are, but I think we know who we all are and what we've been doing over all these years. So for us to have a collaboration with the Dolphin Company is, you know, in some ways shocking, and in some ways just marvelous that we have that today. And not only did we have that commitment back in late March and early April that we would all work together, but I can say with complete confidence that that collaboration, the trust, grows every day. It's never had a downturn. It's gotten better every day. I now can, you know, hop on WhatsApp or text and reach someone in 2 minutes about something, and they respond. And they respond courteously. You know, this is, you know, we're talking in ways that, you know, with no rancor back and forth. Now that may, you know, I'm being a little facetious, but not a lot, because that is unique. That has never happened in all the years we or any of you have been working with the Miami Seaquarium.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And so that is, I think, special. We've done it so far totally on faith. There isn't a single written document between the two entities saying, this is what we're going to do. This is your responsibility. This is ours. Here's how it works. Now, we are moving forward to create legal documents because we're in the process now of not spending small money together, but spending big money. Mr. Singh has committed to putting his resources and others, bringing other resources together to make sure funding isn't what holds this back.
Yeah.
So we have to then have some legal agreements as to how we spend money together and collectively on certain things, or who spends on what. So we're getting into those details. But for the last 3.5, 4 months, we've done it on faith. If I get on an airplane, I hop on an airplane and we'll figure out how to pay for it. And we do. And if the docs go down, if the veterinarians are there, wherever they are, who needs a hotel room, who needs this, we figure it out. And we do it. And we don't let that get in the way. And so that, I think, is part of response to the question Annette raised. Are they sincere in what we've heard that they'll support her going home? And so I think in that sense, all of this is part of that sincerity. And I take them at their word. And so far, it's been appropriate to do so.
Thank you. One of the other questions, and it seems to be a theme as well, as with Keiko, he was in another place, in halfway house, someone called it. And instead of putting all this money into tank repairs and a crumbling stadium, has that been discussed, looking at a healing? We all want her home. We all want her to heal at home. But has that been a discussion at all of moving her while she continues her healing out of that area and tank?
Well, I think, come back to the analogy to Keiko. And Keiko went from a very small tank in Mexico City to a specially built facility at the Oregon Coast Aquarium. And the reality is that was millions of dollars. And so these kinds of decisions, money is a part of how do you find that money? So yes, people are stepping forward to give lots of money, but building a tank for millions of dollars, when certainly one would hope it's temporary and the like, the tank, could we take her back where Keiko was? Well, unfortunately, that tank is no longer a facility that could house her. Otherwise, that might be a possibility. But certainly looking at everything that's possible, we should do. Evaluating the economics of it is something we should do. But we also have to be somewhat realistic about what this all costs. Even a bay pen and a netted enclosure with the appropriate depths and the like, that too is millions of dollars. It's not hundreds of thousands. Now, we think a lot of things can be contributed with the expertise of Pradam Singh and he's been in the business as a developer of hotels and the like over the years. Other people, even the Dolphin Company themselves, we have resources so things will not all cost cold hard cash. But at the same time, these are very, very big development projects that take a long time. We should see what we can do simultaneously with getting her healthy and do all of them. But we also have to understand the costs and time that it takes to do them. Keiko, the project for Keiko, not only was it the capital cost of building that facility in Oregon, but the bay pen and the netted enclosure in Iceland, and then the ongoing operations probably of over $4 million a year. And I do have kind of the personal experience of managing those funds. So those are big numbers. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it for her. It's just an explanation of what it takes to do the same.
And one of the other things, and I want to get to Alejandro in a minute because I know he has a question.
Trying.
I know. I have to get him to unmute, but I'm trying to keep the questions are coming, man. They're coming fast. Speaking of doing things simultaneously, can we, while assessing her health, while doing that, can some of these federal agencies, can we begin to have some of these conversations? Like, this is clearly where we're going to go. Can you guys, meaning the federal agencies, start to look at what that's going to take? Like, can we start anything with them?
I think
that's our end goal.
My own thought is, of course we can. But again, people who've had the most experience with this, you want to make sure you're doing it in the appropriate way. You want to have your attorneys that are used to doing it at your side. You know, it's one thing, I've had this experience. You have a cup of coffee with a permitting agency at the coffee shop across the street from their office. And you can do that. You go across the street to their office, and this was my experience in Silver Spring with one of these same agencies in Washington. Then their attorneys are seated at the desk. Then you have to bring your own attorneys to the desk. And all of a sudden the conversation is just different. So it's important to understand how to have the conversations, when to have them, and when they are formal and when they're informal, because the moment they are formal, the process is very different, and you're getting a regulatory response. And you may not want the regulatory response too soon.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Alejandro, do you want to unmute yourself so you can?
Finally, you're letting him unmute. I tell you.
I am mute. Hi, thank you, Charles Vinick, for joining us. Yeah, my question and my concern is about, we are now in hurricane season. I remember Hurricane Irma destroyed the facility of the Miami Aquarium a few years ago, and we are right now hurricane season.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't like to see the stadium, all Lolita, just falling down because we have an hurricane category 5 approaching Florida. So I think all these plans we have now gonna be like a waste of time. So I think we need to start doing something to try to hurry up this process. I don't know how.
Yes.
I am not a vet, but I hear all the conversation. But I think we had to hurry up and do something else. I think Howard and many people, I support the idea that Lolita should be moved to a different environment, because the environment she's in now is environment that where she become unhealthy. You know, she's unhealthy because this environment. So I mean, this is my concern. And you know, the hurricane season and the place where she is now. You know, the environment is like not healthy.
Yes. No, I thank you for the comment. I applaud it and thank you.
I know one of the. I mean, I'm assuming there's some sort of emergency protocols, right, for hurricane if they need to move her quickly. And I know you might not be able to answer that because you're not there, but I'm hoping there's something in place for her. If I mean, do you know if there is?
Well, I think, they have contingency plans for all of these kinds of storms and the like. But again, I have to leave that to them to speak to than for me to try to speak to what their specific plans would be.
Yeah.
One of the things to step back about, you mentioned it earlier in that about, well, who's watching whom, and, with USDA. And this is a very interesting issue because the Miami Sea Aquarium has a lease from the county, which you're all familiar with, all those lease negotiations back in the early part of the year. They also have a license from APHIS in the Department of Agriculture for the operation of the facility. And they get inspected and the like on a regular basis, and reports will be issued and so forth as they have in the past. And I'm not familiar with that because our focus is solely on Toki. So other things in the park, we don't have any engagement in. So what's interesting is that if you read the license, and I think you all have read the letter from the Department of Agriculture, Toki, Le'i, and the stadium are not part of that license. So who oversees in that sense, and what agency does it move to, does raise some really interesting questions, because this is somewhat unprecedented, if not totally unprecedented. So in that sense, certainly under the lease, of the terms of the lease, the county does inspect, and they come in and they can do that. Certainly, other agencies have some oversight of her, but exactly what that means legally isn't as clear as it might be. And certainly, some of our organizations in the nonprofit part of this activity have raised some questions about what precedent does that set for other animals, and how, can someone just take an animal off their license and then no longer be under federal inspection for that animal? That raises quite a number of questions for not the Miami Seaquarium. I mean, we kind of know what's happening there, but what does that mean legally and from a precedent standpoint? So that's certainly still being discussed by various organizations, agencies, and lawyers. And I don't think the answer is clear. But what I can say is that the fact that we have this level of transparency, you may not feel it's transparent enough, and I welcome that discussion. I think we can all do better on our side and hopefully bring more people into it, and we will. But the fact that we have this transparency, we have this collaboration and the building of a partnership does help with that oversight right now. So nothing is happening that would happen behind closed doors. And similarly, responding to hurricane contingencies and how they would be dealt with. And, this is an area that's in, basically at sea level or below. So it's a real serious question going forward. And people have said, well, should she be moved to SeaWorld? Would SeaWorld want that? Would she be with other whales there? That question was, in all the news in March and February, everyone was saying, was that the next step? Those are things that we have not been discussing at this stage. And I think, those are in many ways not the ones that we necessarily want to be discussing. We want to be focused on how to move her to an environment that we think is the most conducive for her.
Yeah. Thank you. And I know we're talking very big things here. Obviously, a move for her would be huge, and the goal. A couple of things that don't seem that they would cost a lot. So we're talking about stadium renovations. Can you tell us why there's no, or do you know why a sunshade wasn't put up this summer, or still hasn't been put up as far as any of us know? That's a huge question from people every single week. Doesn't seem like it would cost that much. I mean, we could pitch in and get one.
The most important thing with respect to sun for her and for any orca that's in an environment like this is that the sun not be in her eyes when she's doing things. So you'll see that if a trainer is there, there is a shade that prevents the sun from being in her eyes when she's looking to a trainer for a sign or a cue and the like. Because what you don't want is any kind of impact of the sun on her eyes. So that's the most important thing, and that's being dealt with. There is less concern from the veterinarians about sun on her body in the way that she continues to move and the like. So I think that is a discussion to have. It hasn't been where the funds have been allocated right now. I agree with you. That's not necessarily expensive, although you got some issues with wind and birds and all the rest that you have to deal with that. But there's been much more focus on water quality itself, on temperature of the water, and making sure that her water environment is optimal. And we know it has not been historically, and we know that that's where to put a lot of our emphasis right now, and that's where it's being put.
Okay. It just seems, to the person, it just seems like we could just go put that up in a weekend while we're doing all these other things. It really just doesn't seem like why not? It wouldn't hurt. So that's a big question from all of the people out there, really. People are offering to go buy the shade. So
I saw that. Yeah. Again, I don't think the economics of it is the issue.
Okay. So hopefully maybe we can still get that. Maybe.
Certainly it's something to discuss. Yes.
Thank you. And then on food, you mentioned that she is getting whole salmon. Has she been given any live fish, one, and two, any Chinook salmon? Has any Chinook been sent there?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question as to which species of salmon she's been given.
Okay.
I have not seen that she's been given any live fish. I do have the experience of live fish with Keiko. You give them live fish, they're not necessarily going to think that's food. I mean, certainly with Keiko, it took a long time for him to think it was something he should swallow. He did bring them back as though it was a toy to his trainers and the like. He would also do that with crabs and other critters often.
Sure.
So, the live fish issue is one that can be tried. It certainly is trial and error, but it would be more of a supplement than it would be anything for her full complement of food in any case.
Charles, I'd like to offer another perspective. I've heard about Keiko bringing live fish back to the trainers as if it was a toy. But what seems to be lacking there is an understanding that for orcas, it's a universal, it appears, behavior to share food.
Of course. Yeah.
That's ritual, that's social interaction, that's building trust, it's building relationship.
Right.
So it's not that he didn't recognize it as food. I think that's a real misconception. I think it's that he shared that food, and that isn't appreciated. So,
well, I think that's certainly possible, but the goal is also to have them actually consume them.
Yeah.
And so even when they're sharing back with their human cohort, if you will, I'm not sure how that can be translated into then sharing the food. And so that does have to get worked through in that way. But
Keiko also ate food. He ate the live fish as well at times.
Over time,
Yeah.
he learned live fish. Yes.
Yeah.
Some of the other maybe not as expensive options, and I don't know, maybe they are and we just don't know, other enrichment areas that are going to be implemented. I know there was discussions about playing sounds from the Salish Sea. Also, I mean, we talked about the water quality thing. I think that's just going to be ongoing to see how that gets fixed. But music, what other, has that been done? Have sounds been played for her?
No, over time, there have certainly been in the past. Now, as I said, there are three pillars of cooperative and collaborative activity. Their whole medical health, the physical environment that we've talked some about, and then the whole area of enrichment. And enrichment, so there's the environmental enrichment, which is improving the physical side. Then there's the enrichment for her life and physically for herself. So those are introducing all kinds of things. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge about this work, both in the wild and in captive environments. And so we're just beginning this third pillar of bringing a number of people to assist with the trainers who are on site. So there are members of our team that are now beginning to be on site to engage with her animal care staff and her veterinarians about other enrichment things to be introduced. So that can be things as simple as underwater water flow. It can be waterfalls. It can be different objects that she chooses, that she likes, that she drives. So much of this from a veterinary standpoint for enrichment is, how do you provide her with things where she is choosing what to do, where she's engaging her mind, and it's not the trainer who is doing the decision, who's making the decision as to what she should do. She's making the decision based on what she likes, what she finds is stimulating for her, and will want to do it more. So the technology around that, and there's a lot of science, and this should all be science-based, is you introduce one thing new, and you see whether that's a positive experience for her or not. And the more positive experience is that she has autonomy about deciding to engage with, the more it is, from the scientific standpoint about the literature, thought that that will be the most stimulating. So those are the things we're now bringing into this third pillar, and having not only her own team, and they have lots of ideas. This isn't, we're going to impose on them things we think they should do for her and with her. That's what collaboration is. We're doing it with them. Their ideas from others who have experiences in other places, both captive and wild environments, to try to make sure that environment can be as stimulating as possible for as long as she has to be in it.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this because Joy said she's sorry to ask again, but what about Double Bay as a temporary home? Has that been? I don't know, Double Bay.
I don't think, well, Double Bay is up in the north. It's up off Hansen Island. And certainly it's an area that's being looked at more for northern resident. And so there's talk of Corky and the like for that kind of an environment. And it's in the stages, but it has not been at all an environment. This is the focus on sites here has really been in the San Juans. And so certainly you can go back and you can find, I think, Howard, still on your website. Certainly there's been sites on Orcas Island that have been looked at. There are sites on a couple of other islands. There are 2 or 3 sites that I think are still the primary ones to be considered. To my knowledge, none of them are off the table. I know there's discussion that, some of the ideas for Orcas, because of property sales and the like, are no longer possible. To my knowledge, that's not the case. Those are still on the table. Now, are they settled? No, in part because much of what we learned in meetings with the Department of Natural Resources, DNR, for the state of Washington, is that they certainly look to the upland landowner for any site that would be netted off in the water area adjacent to that upland. So you want to make sure you have the upland owner as part of whatever the group is that's making the request for a permit and is going to be the owner of that and the responsible party, legally and otherwise, that the upland owner is either part of it or at a minimum endorses it. Now, that's not always easy to get. And not only is it may not even be a single owner. And then you have some real issues. And I have familiarity with all those in other parts of the world. And so you really have to bring them on board in every way. And they have to be part and parcel of that process. So that's still ongoing. But to my knowledge, none of those sites are off the table. But no, going outside her normal environment up to Hansen Island area and the like has never been part of a discussion that I've heard.
Okay. Thank you. People want to talk about the CPEN. I mean, what can you tell us? Has that been started? How long would that take? How big of a deal is it to build that? What's going on with that?
Well, certainly there have been discussions and engineering plans for a CPEN that would work for her, that we did, the Whale Sanctuary Project did in conjunction with Sacred Sea Conservancy to plan for that, to meet with the engineers, to get an engineering plan for such a facility that would include a medical lift and be able to be subdivided in ways that made sense, and that would have a netted enclosure outside it. So in fact, over time, she could come outside the sea environment, which is still good size, but even have more environment for it. So those engineering plans have been engaged, and we've worked on them. Taking the step to actually start construction has not happened, nor is the funding in place for it. It is a major capital expenditure to do that, but certainly it is. Design plans are there, development plans are available, determining when to, if you will, pull the contract and begin to start it. Again, requires who's going to own it, who's going to be responsible for it, who has amassed all of the funding for it, and how do you do that hand in hand and in tandem? Again, going back to some of what Alejandro said, how do you get this all started and move it forward in a way so you're not sitting on your hands and all of a sudden you're behind the 8 ball when all of a sudden you can move her? Those are great questions. Those are important questions. But at this stage, the capital that's necessary to start that and the determination of what entity can legally do that has not been finalized.
Okay. How much would something like that cost? If it's in a, like Christina asked, could it be less expensive CPEN if it's in a cove?
Well, certainly the more protected the area that it's in, the less robust from a steel and netting standpoint it would need. But at the same time, the less flow you would have for the natural cleanliness of the area and the like. So all of those are part of the site assessment criteria that go into determining an appropriate site. And that's why there are only a couple of, or 3 or 4, but primarily 2 or 3 sites that really have met the physical criteria for protection, great water flow, temperature, all of the physical criteria, as well as an environment that has the appropriate depth. I mean, you want to be close enough to shore that your staff can deal with it, while at the same time have sufficient depth that she can have diving that she's never had, the ability to swim distances. So all of those are part of the physical criteria of selecting the place. And that's why there are an unlimited number of them that work. And so while, yes, it might be less expensive if you needed a less robust facility, but that much protection may not provide the physical environment that's the one you want for her. So most of the work we've done has provided a very robust facility, one that can also still move. So you're not, you don't want something that's so rigid that in extreme weather it breaks. We had that experience in Iceland. So you want to, all of those are, we've learned a lot over all these years, just leave it at that. And it is, though, still millions of dollars if you're still paying for all of it and it's not provided in kind. I have had great help with this particular facility with some in-kind engineering. Once you get to construction and the like, I haven't found that it's in-kind donation much more. You have to make the contracts and go forward as you would with any other construction project.
Okay. So just to clarify, someone's asking, no, the site has not been selected, but there are a few that are in play, correct?
That's correct. They're definitely in play. None that were talked about over the years, well, particularly the last 2 or 3 years, are off the table. And certainly with the upland owners and with regulatory agencies, there are discussions that can be taking place. But again, you've got to have a determination of who is legally responsible to make the ask to start some of that. And we're working on some of those discussions, but they're not determined today.
Okay. And of the $1 million that's been donated, has any of that been allocated to the CPEN?
I'm not familiar with the $1 million that's been donated or to whom.
Well, so the conversation regarding Pritam when he first came on.
I'm sorry. Yeah, those funds that he made a commitment to do. No, those have not been allocated to things other than what we're working on at already and what we plan to be working on today, not to a CPEN so far. Okay. And Pritam also has looked into the fact that with his experience in construction and development, that he does believe that some of the cost estimates that we have made over time can be improved upon with in-kind donations with people who will support this and the like. So those discussions have taken place and been not in depth, but certainly have been touched upon, but have not been fully acted upon yet.
Okay. And then I'm guessing you can't answer this question because it's regarding Sacred Sea, but the money being donated there, that's to the CPEN, correct? As far as your knowledge, that question's come up quite a few times.
Yeah, no, I really don't have visibility on that, but certainly I think Sacred Sea Conservancy can respond to that.
Perfect.
And again, I think, some of it, what I would expect is that some of it's being held to use as they have the opportunity to do so in meaningful ways. So I think that the GoFundMe fund has not been fully subscribed, and they're holding funds to use as they can in the ways that would be responsible in spending it.
Yeah, I still donate there often and encourage others to, just because I know it's going to go towards her.
Yeah, I mean, what I can certainly say is I don't think any funds that anyone has donated or that Pritam Singh has put forward or other have been misused in any way. I mean, I think they're being very carefully spent and responsibly handled. And certainly, that's part of my responsibility with respect to Funds of Lolita, is as we spend money and use it, is to make sure we are doing it responsibly. And I can say that we are.
Okay, cool. And speaking of money, we did talk about, we're going to do a little bit of the conspiracy theories going around. And so I do want to address this. Insurance. A lot of people believe that the dolphin company is hanging on to her for the insurance money. What do you know about insurance on a whale in captivity?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay.
I would think it's a pretty bad risk for the insurance company over time if you look at the history, but that's nothing to, I don't know a thing about it. I have never heard it come up as something that is of interest or is in the back of the minds of anyone. And
some of the other concerns, Charles, is that, like, does the whale sanctuary want to see this happen? Or are you guys scared? Are you guys nervous about?
No, that's a great question. I saw that come across in one of the letters. The answer is two things. One, first of all, our mission is for whales in captivity to no longer be in captivity, to be in sanctuaries. So that doesn't mean sanctuaries in Nova Scotia or sanctuaries here or sanctuaries anywhere else. To be in sanctuary. It's what the word means. It's not only about a place. It's what you think of when we think of sanctuary. It is sacred. And so our commitment, and the reason we have worked with the Lummi in this area and Sacred Sea Conservancy, the reason I'm doing what we're doing here, is because we want her to go home, and we will do everything we can to help that happen. And if it doesn't happen for any reason, it doesn't happen, and that will not stop us from continuing to do what we think we should be doing for cetaceans in captivity everywhere.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. And Robert asked a question a while ago. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, but do you have any suggestions for, I'm trying to find it. It was a good question. Suggestions for us, or, oh gosh, Deb, do you know which one I'm talking about? About other, here we go. Is there any way this community can help on the issue of new diagnostic tools to help better resolve the infection challenge? I mean, would you guys be open to hearing from other?
Oh, I think we hear now, the we is, again, it's important that if we're talking diagnostic tools, they're not coming to Charles. It's important that they're, with Dr. Norman, Dr. McBain, other veterinarians and the like. But the answer is, of course, anything we receive, and I do receive them from a number of people on a regular basis. For those of you who don't know, I'm not real active on social media. I mean, I don't even know how to use half the tools that all of you are expert in. But I do receive the information from those people on our team who are active and the like. So either by email and otherwise, I get suggestions all the time. We share them with the vets, and the vets are certainly open to hearing them. Now, part of the reason that you want a variety of veterinarians involved is, and Pritam Singh has spoken to this in the very first press conference and subsequently, if it was your sister, your mother, or your daughter, you would want a second opinion and a third if there were issues that she was suffering from. And that's part of what bringing collaborating veterinarians into this process is about, is to make sure that we're not having tunnel vision and only treating with something that's been used in marine parks before, for instance. It's that we're open to having different diagnostic tools and different protocols be considered. At the end of the day, the people who have to make the decision, though, are the vets who are responsible for her. So Dr. Norman, Dr. McBain, they bring all of their expertise. They make their recommendations and suggestions. They don't actually, if you will, to use the analogy of a human doctor, write the prescription. That would still have to be done by the veterinarians who have custodial responsibility for her. But it is an open dialogue. It's a dialogue where they are welcoming this kind of experience to be brought to bear. And more of that, certainly from suggestions from others, are important. At the same time, we get some off-the-wall suggestions that may not be taken as serious as some others, but all of it is important. And all of the concerns you have, you've heard Howard today bring back, challenges to me that I welcome. He and I have been doing this for years, so it's not new. And so, I welcome that. And we do as a group welcome that engagement because, again, Friends of Lolita isn't an organization that's going to do this, whatever this is, on our own. We're going to do it with all of you and bring more of you into it. And to the extent that we haven't done it yet, put that on me. We just haven't had the bandwidth necessarily to do all of it that we would want. But we want to be completely open. We want to be engaging in this in every way. Transparency goes both directions. And we're committed to continuing this level of public engagement. And that includes hearing your ideas and seeing if it's possible to bring them to bear.
Thank you for saying that. One quick question on the CPEN, and then Charles, I want to be respectful of your time. So we're going to have to start to try to wrap this up. But unless you just want to hang with us all day, because we could probably do this all day. But the CPEN, we talked about how much that would, we know how much it would cost, and we know we need someone to apply first and all that. But the actual build, how long do you think that would take?
Good question. It can be fast tracked. I mean, a lot of the build takes place elsewhere. So there, and certain of the components are used in lots of different. I mean, we can debate aquaculture and the benefits and challenges of ocean aquaculture, but the technology that has been developed for open ocean aquaculture does have some application to the best ways to do a bay pen. And so some of the people we've been engaged with, their day-to-day work is not bay pens. It's different kinds of in-ocean facilities that can work. So a lot of the engineering is done, and a lot of the construction would take place off-site, be shipped to site, just as it was for Iceland with Keiko 24 years ago. 24 years ago. So that can be done. So I think it can be fast-tracked, but it's not days and weeks. It's still months. And you do have to fabricate certain of the flotation tubes, but there are some ways that you're not only using flotation tubes, you actually have ways to access all of the bay pen. So really some really good experience forward to make that work, and it can be fast-tracked, but it's still months.
Okay. And then a couple more things. Let's see. People are concerned. So do they have a way to, how are they weighing her? Because they have to know what she weighs, right? In order to prescribe the medication. How do they weigh her right now? Do you know?
What we do have, and it's first of all, without a medical lift kind of approach, actually getting a daily weight on her is difficult. And so they often compare girth measurements and the like, which aren't giving you instantaneous information, but they do measure her and observe her in every way. And that's much of the day-to-day looking at her and the like, is to know amounts of medication and the like. But again, I think we talked at the very first moments, some hour and a half ago or what have you, about that she has been historically on lots of meds. And so I think certainly among all of the veterinarians today, there's a desire to reduce the amount of medication that she's on when you can isolate which ones are providing benefit to illness and are some dealing with side effects, and what are the side effects of one versus the other, exactly the kinds of issues we as humans wrestle with when we're dealing with infection that has not been isolated and clarified. And so that process is going on as well to try to not have her on more medication that is as healthy as possible. And so that too is part of the diagnostic work that is taking place.
Okay. And then my kind of final questions, and then we'll see if Howard and Alejandro have anything else as well, and probably not Deb, because Deb doesn't like to talk, but she said no. But people are asking, what can we do? Christina Mully is asking, like, what can we as public advocates, those who love her, what can we be doing right now that would be helpful in this process, Charles?
Well, I think, first of all, that's a great question. And I thank all of you for it, because I think it's a question that's on all of your minds. It's the one I hear the most when people email me. And what I would say is you're doing it. You're doing it right now today by being part of it, by continuing to ask the questions you ask, by continuing to make sure that your voices are heard. You know, I've never been a protester. It's not what I find I'm particularly effective at. I remember, when I just one quick little aside, I was in college and in the 60s, so Vietnam days. And so I remember when, Dow Chemical was doing their interviews for jobs on campuses, and campuses around the country went on strike. So companies like that could not come on campus. So the university I was at, we had a whole school, university meeting. Are we going to go on strike? And I got up to the university meeting and said, well, I don't think we ought to go on strike. I think we should all overpay our next bill by $1 and demand a refund, because our challenge is with the administration, not with the faculty. Well, I was laughed off the stage and we went on strike the following day. But I mentioned that more as, okay, I learned out of that experience where my expertise, if I have any, is. And it really is in the kind of work I'm trying to do with Friends of Lolita, with the Whale Sanctuary Project, of these kinds of negotiations and collaboration partnerships and the like. We each have our respective skill sets. And I say, keep using the ones you have. Now, I don't always think protest in front of the Miami Seaquarium is necessary today, because in fact, we have the ear of the owners in a way we've never had before. But making sure they still know how you feel is equally important and shouldn't be stopped. And I think they recognize that as well. They're under huge pressure. I mean, where are they getting some protest? From the captivity industry, probably, who say, you're talking to these guys? You've lost your marbles. Okay, but they are talking with us, and they are collaborating with us in ways that we've not seen before. So in that sense, I don't necessarily think protest of the kind that was necessary before is as necessary today, but keeping your voices in front of them, continuing to provide thoughtful, reasonable, respectful input to this process, as you do with this show every Sunday, is critically important and welcome. And even all the questions that Deb has asked me today, those are the ones that she should keep asking every day and continue with on a regular basis.
I unmuted you, Deb. We had to hear you laugh just a little bit. We let Charles know that Deb has her own hashtag. So thank you, Charles, for playing along with that.
Sure.
Someone wants to know, when's the last time you saw her?
I saw her 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
I'm frequently on a commuting to Nova Scotia from California, and Miami is on the way. So, if you just think of, if you go east, you got to go through Miami, but also whenever anything comes up, it's, I'm there. And so on a regular basis, the vets, we're scheduling their next trip now as we speak. And others who are part of it as we get into enrichment, expanding the pie, if you will, making sure that the tent is large and the tent is larger to include all of you as well in every way we can going forward. Let me just say that a number of you have, I don't know whether it's you or others, but we've gotten lots of letters, and Pritam Singh has received postcards and letters and the like, and those have been inspiring. They really are in every way. And so he is grateful for receiving them. He looks forward to all of us, myself and him particularly, reaching out to those groups, organizations that have been responsive, been sending things in to figure out the best ways to include all of you and all of these organizations in this process going forward in every way that makes good sense to do it. So far, we've been just trying to make sure we get stuff done and get it done as quickly as we can. And I recognize that it seems like it's slow and we're not doing much. And why aren't you talking to us? I get it. But please understand that we're doing absolutely the best we can. And we will continue to do that every single day.
One more question. I know I keep saying that, right? Does the Dolphin Company know about TokiTV?
They do now. They know I'm here. This is not a secret.
People are asking, and I want to make sure that everybody knows that, yes, Mr. Albor could come on here whenever he wants to. Mr. Singh could come on here whenever he wants to. I mean, this is a wide open invitation, as well as invitations that have been sent a while back. Absolutely. I mean, people are here every single week for her. So thank you, Charles, for coming on here, probably knowing you were going to get some tough questions. Just so everyone knows, I asked Charles if there's anything we should avoid, and he said, no, I will take any questions that come in. So thank you for being willing to do that. And yes, anyone from Friends of Lolita is welcome on here at any time. We will make those arrangements happen very quickly. And if they want to go see just what Toki TV is all about, that we're also on YouTube if you type in Toki TV. Thank you for acknowledging that we are respectful, because we really strive for that. And we, it's kind of our motto, right? Faith, prayer, and education, and just really encouraging people to be positive. I've noticed all these letter writing campaigns are encouraging people to be positive. So there's been a huge shift, right? There's been a huge shift from the fists in the air and the bullhorns. Those got the attention, and now there's work being done, and all of it is necessary. Like you said, whatever your gifts are, use them, continue to use them. It's making a difference. And so just, really, really thank you. I'll say it 1,000 times. Thank you so much for being here, and you're welcome on any time. Alejandro, do you have any final questions or anything you want to say?
No, thank you so much, Charles. And I offer myself next time when you come to Florida and visit Lolita, I would like to stay there. Maybe I can do a Facebook Live and share how Lolita is doing, It would be great if I can do that. We do this for the Toki TV show. I would really appreciate if we can do that. If we can do a Facebook Live in front of the stadium, I'm very, very, hopefully for this to happen.
Let me respond to that. Well, first of all, I welcome the opportunity, and I thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you so much.
One of the things that I think is really challenging, not only for all of us, but for the Dolphin Company as well, given their license, they are not allowed to have, as you saw in the letter, anyone inside the facility. So while they too, I think, would like the transparency of being able to show people how healthy, how responsive, how, what Tokitai is doing on a daily basis, they're constrained as well. And I think I don't think they're happy about that, because I think they'd like to be able to be a little more open, and you've got this delicate kind of strange license for them. So I think that's a challenge as well. Let me say two things, if I may, in closing. One, back to what I said at the beginning, none of this would have happened at all without all of you. And without and Howard, I keep saying it because Howard, he deserves, and Susan, tremendous respect for what has gone on for decades. And I single him out, but there are many of you who probably deserve similar. But we would not be here but for you. So I think it's really incumbent upon us to remember that and to respect it and celebrate it, because that's what has made this all possible. And I believe it's that spirit that has sustained her and sustains her to this day, whether it's the Lummi prayers and what Raynell and Ellie do, the prayers you have at the beginning of your broadcast, and the prayers you all have in each and every one of your own personal ways. They do sustain her, and they sustain us. So it's really critical that all continues. And so, you've seen our website names. They've come across the screen a few times. Most of you know how to reach me, fortunately or unfortunately. What I will say is that I welcome the inquiries, the emails, and the letters. Please know that I will do my best to be responsive, but I'll be slow. I don't even type particularly well, but I will, be as responsive as I can be. But the most important thing that I can be doing is what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis to try to move this forward. And so sometimes I'm less responsive on a case-by-case basis than I might. And that's why I so appreciate being able to come on here, respond to the questions. And so I won't necessarily respond to all 103 letters that are in the in basket, but hopefully you're getting a response today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Appreciate
so much,
it.
Charles. Thank you
Any
so much.
closing words, Howard?
Well, yeah, I just want to say thank you, Charles. I really appreciate this. And I think I'm agreeing with pretty much everybody. You can see it all in the comments and so many more that are watching this. And I really appreciate your being so open and forthcoming and facilitating this conversation. I mean, just sort of letting us know what's going on, which has been so far behind the scenes. We have just not known, what's happening, who's doing it, and what are they doing, what are they thinking, and all that. And you've really clarified so much of that, and I appreciate that so much. And I hope it hasn't been a grueling experience for you. And I know you appreciate that.
This is a good audience. This isn't tough. Go to some town meetings in Nova Scotia, then you get some challenges.
Okay. All right. Good. And when I bring up, matters of, fact or interpretation, that's just, items on the table for us to talk about. It's
and
not
they
about
should
you or
be
me.
in every way. And I welcome them.
Great.
Privately and publicly.
And just as a kind of a sign off, if I can just sort of offer a paradigm, that when you go to your doctor, and you've got a persistent cough and they can't really pin it down, don't know really how to treat it, they're likely to say, can you get out of the house and go take a walk and get some fresh air and just a little light exercise, and that may make you feel better. And I think, Toki is stuck in the house, and she needs, some fresh air and fresh water, and my paradigm, my sort of, guiding idea of the overall, sort of mission for us all is to give her that fresh air and that fresh water and that exercise that will be so much better for her. So that's I'm laying that vision on the table for you. So
it is the right vision to have.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Charles.
Thank you. So
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you
great
so much.
analogy. Yes, great analogy, Howard. Some people are saying in the comments, and I just want to remind people in your prayers throughout the week, whether it's in your prayer or meditation, just keep that vision of her coming home. and stay positive. Don't give up. We will bring her home, and we will see all of you next Sunday at 1 o'clock. Charles, again, you're welcome on here anytime you want. You know how to reach me. Just send me a message, and we'll get you back on here. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and we will talk soon.